softballs. All right. All right, so what we're going through here is how to deal with the Hello World project. So first of all, if I go to, if I get my zip file, you download this from Canvas, you save it to your hard drive somewhere. Another thing that I didn't mention before I started recording was you should probably have a consistent place to save things on your computer. When you download things, it's going to go into your downloads folder. That's probably not where you want to work on things. That's where you're going to have any kind of downloads you do. So if you download something from Facebook or from YouTube, like that's going to be in there, along with all your programming files, along with anything you download from a browser, right? So that's just a bunch of chaos and clutter that you probably are best to avoid, okay? So whether you save things on your desktop or in this case, I'm saving things like in several nested folders deep into a folder of my projects, whatever your organization method is, that is totally up to you. If you want me to help you and give you one-on-one recommendations, I totally will, but you can do whatever you want. You can keep them in your downloads folder as far as I'm concerned, but it will probably cause you some trouble, okay? So when you download that file and you move it to where you want it to be, you want to decompress it. So actually on the Mac, if you're using a Mac, it's going to look like this, and you should be able to just right click, and I think I can extract it here. Maybe not. Maybe not. So that is confusing. So on the Mac, you double click and it'll uncompress it. On Windows, you do not want to do that. On Windows, you absolutely want to single click on it. And there should be an extract button at the top, and you're going to want to hit that. And I'll give another video where I walk through that. But make sure you extract it. Don't just work on it as a zip file. All right, so then once we extract it, then we have our Hello World starter right here. Because I already have some folders for you on your EC2 server, and it's called Hello World. What you'll probably want to do is rename this right away to Hello World instead of Hello World Starter. So that's probably the first thing I would do, is just rename that right away. The things that I have hyphenated, and I was going into before, the difference, there's the hyphens, a dash, or an underscore, which it might even be hard to see, but it's like the underline character. Those are some common separators to use instead of spaces. Just because in file names, I'm going to tend to use the dashes, the hyphens. In variable names and function names, things like that, we might use underscores. So we can talk more about that. So now I'm going to show this in Atom, and I understand on your computers here at school you don't have Atom, but we're going to dig into this now. So our specific naming stuff. Oops. Let's do this again. Drag this in here. Okay, so to go along with the hello-world as the project folder name, I would also, you can delete this PDF if you don't need it. Like, you don't need that. That's not a text file, okay? So, in fact, I will just hit delete right now, okay? So we have in here index.html. You probably are going to want to call that index.html, okay? So anybody make websites before, familiar with what like index.html is? You want to take a crack at explaining why?
Well, I guess I don't really know what the index means, but I've used HTML.
Yeah. You want to take a stab at it?
It's the homepage.
Yeah, it's the homepage. What's your name again? Keegan. Yeah. So great answer. So this is the homepage for this project, okay? The homepage, which is kind of an archaic term now, but what that means is if I go to my web browser and I just type in the name hello-world, it's going to open up this index.html file automatically, okay? So if you've ever seen anybody that really doesn't understand how the web works, and they give a URL and it's like /this index.asp ? That like if it's a big long complicated URL, they probably just are not following some really basic conventions like this, okay? So you can just use index.html, and this is automatically opened up if we open up the Hello World folder in a web browser, okay? And notably, in a web browser, not on your local computer when we're testing these things, okay? So that gets a little confusing at times, but that's just a good best practice to do, okay? So I would always, for each project, I would name the main HTML file index.html. I would leave that alone, but you don't have to. You can do what you want, okay? But I would leave that alone. But if you know what you're doing, you want to change it, that is cool, okay? The other two files, I'm just using the project name, and I'm adding the .css and .js at the end, okay? Now, I would leave the extensions the same. The extensions matter when you're serving up files from a web server. It's not arbitrary. You don't just get to name them whatever you want after the dot. Those extensions matter, just like it matters if it's a JPEG or an MP4. It matters if it's .css or .js. It can screw things up, and you might not be able to get it to download properly. Yeah.
So should we have a PDF file too?
Yep, there is. I deleted it. I deleted mine just to show that you can. You don't need to keep it if you don't want to, especially for this one, because it's super easy. This is an easy project. Okay. Good question. Anybody else have anything? Sorry, because I dig into the screen and then I might not see you, so give a yelp out if there's anything. So the very first thing we're going to do is look at the HTML, because that's the thing, that's the master of the whole project, okay? This is the file that loads the other two files in. So HTML, does everybody know what HTML is? Anybody not know what HTML is? Okay, that's cool. I won't dwell on that too much. If you don't, feel free to mention that. So, so as our resource for creating HTML, we're going to use the W3 Schools HTML5. Okay, so that is this stuff. Okay, so this HTML here, everything in this list is fair game to use, and it's up to you how much of it you want to learn. We're going to use a lot of basic text elements. We're going to use some images. We're going to use Canvas. Is there a section on Canvas specifically? Yeah, that's HTML graphics. Okay, and we're going to use forms pretty extensively. Okay, so you don't have a textbook, but I would read up on this, and this is actually super awesome, because if you go to HTML forms, look at this, you can try it yourself. So it's interactive. It shows you an HTML document. It shows you how it renders in the browser. You can make changes, rerun it, and those will be reflected over there. Okay, so it's very interactive. You can try out things on this site. And it's just a great learning tool, and they explain things very well. This is sort of like the standard for learning HTML now. Okay, so anybody have any questions about that? I think I put this in the resources page in Canvas, and I'll show you guys that if we don't run out of time. So how are we doing on time? When do we run out? 150? 50? Okay, good, because I want to give you guys time to work, so that's good. All right. All right, so then trucking along, I'm going to just look at what this HTML document looks like. So as you guys probably already know, any URL that you pull up, not any, but I guess most URLs you pull up that are going to show a web page anyway, are going to be built on HTML. Okay, so that's what this is. Okay, so HTML is just a series of tags, and there's some information. And when I say tags, it's just these little brackets. Okay, so if you've never done HTML before, congratulations, you're an HTML programmer. That's how you program HTML. It's just brackets. Okay, it's these little brackets which are called tags, and then you just intersperse those with actual text that is presented to the user for the most part. Everything else is usually contained within tags. Okay, so anything else is usually visible to the user in some fashion. Okay, so in the what is called the head section, and I'm going fast because you guys said you're familiar with HTML. So if you have questions about anything in here, blurt it out. Okay, I just don't want to make you feel like you have to sit through stuff you already know. So this file, even if you did know HTML, this is where we can pull in CSS files. So here we're pulling in the Font Awesome library file from a CDN. Okay. This is where we're pulling in the Bootstrap CSS file from a CDN. And this is where we're pulling in our hello world.css file. Okay. So they all kind of work the same way. You can link to things that are local on your local server and things that are remote on the internet. Okay. It's kind of interchangeable, and you can pull all these things in and create all sorts of chaos. Okay. Any questions about any of that? So the CSS files, they belong up in the head. Okay, that is the current best practice for that. There's some other things in the head, like the title. So if you're going to make this project completely your own, you want to relabel this title right here is what is reflected in the browser. Okay, so here where it says HTML forms on this page, if we do a view source on this, which you can in most browsers, just right click and go view page source. We can hunt for the title tag, and sure enough, this says HTML forms on it. Okay? Pretty easy. Anybody confused by that? Easy. Okay. So all of the other stuff, all the stuff that's visible in the the main container of the web page is in the body section. Okay, so we kind of divide this out into head and body. And one thing I like about Atom is it allows me to collapse that out so I can just look at the things I care about. Okay, so I only care about the body section now. Okay, and I have some comments in here, and that's what's grayed out. So most programming languages, including HTML, including CSS, including JavaScript, let you put comments in your code so that you can tell yourself or other programmers what you have going on here. Okay, so I have some comments in here about what the hell is going on. Okay, so like here it says, this is where all the visible web page content goes. And then here is where we start using Bootstrap a little bit. So, and feel free to read more about this. I'm going to kind of gloss over this a little bit, but you can go into more details if you want to look into Bootstrap. I might do a video on Bootstrap, and I'll definitely link to a video that has been done about Bootstrap. But basically, the way we utilize Bootstrap for the most part is we are adding classes to these tags. Okay, so everybody that's done some HTML, does that all sound familiar? Anybody confused by that part at all? Classes? Anybody confused? You're confused? Okay, good, okay. What's that? Are you confused also, or you want to explain it? Yeah, anybody want to take a stab at explaining like what a class is in HTML? Come on, I must have an HTML pro here somewhere. Because we're gonna use classes a lot. We're gonna use classes and IDs. Okay. So, yeah, you want to take a stab at it?
Isn't it basically where like you can class like multiple things together and you can
Boom.
edit it?
Perfect. Yep. So you know how like we're all in a class right now? That's a class, right? We're all in a group. So this thing is, so Bootstrap uses classes. So even though we only have one container on this page, it's assigning properties to this container based on what Bootstrap says container-fluid, what properties are associated with that. Okay, we'll dig more into that later. But yeah, a class you can have multiples of these things. Okay, and in fact, we are going to have multiples of these things in some cases. Okay, awesome. So the other one is ID, which is explain ID.
Kind of too. So basically, ID is like you can edit your ID within a class, so it can be its own unique thing.
Yep. So you know how like you guys have your own ID number or a social security number, right? Everybody has their own ID. That's what that is. It's the same thing. So if we want to if we want to identify a particular element on the page, we can give it an ID, and that you can only use that name once. Okay? So IDs can only be used once. If you screw that up, the validator will yell at you. Okay? It'll say, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't use an ID twice." Okay? So again, like that's a cool reason to use a validator. It'll catch those errors. Okay? So we're going to make extensive uses of IDs and classes. Guess I should touch on what a div is. You want to take a stab at that? What's your name again?
Hey then.
Okay, so
I gotta remember what it is. Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
nope, that's cool. So anybody else want to take a stab at it? What a div is? You could probably kind of guess what it is, right? A lot of people call it like a division of the page. Yeah,
It's like a container or something.
totally. It totally is.
I don't remember what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So I don't like the word division because like that doesn't like that metaphor doesn't really work for me. Maybe it does for you guys, but container is a better one because it's like you can put boxes within boxes, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Okay, so we have this outer div, and I'm calling this the outermost responsive container. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo just to say like that's the box on the outside, right? And then in terms of Bootstrap, we're using rows and columns. Okay. Yes.
So the divs are like smaller containers within a big container, kind of like that kind of thing?
Well, you can. So we in this case we have a big div on the outside, and then there are smaller divs on the inside. So yeah, yeah.
Are divs used like brackets are used in Java? Where you contain both pieces of information, like classes and methods inside brackets?
Yeah, sort of. So like a block.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'm not used to so many people having programming experience. So yeah. So you have another thing to throw in there?
I just have a question.
Throw the question in. That's better.
Is it kind of like using a break in C++?
Using a break. No.
Like breaking a line?
Like a line break?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, it's sort of. It can, right? Because you can have it like you can have a div stacked on top of another div, right? But you can also have divs inside of divs. So it depends, right? So so sometimes yes, but it's really so it is kind of a good analogy if you have programming experience, which you don't have to be in here. Don't freak out. But so if you have a block of logic, block of programming logic, and you have a block of programming logic inside of that block, you can have nested. So there's that term nested, if you guys are familiar with that, right? So that's what you can do with divs. Divs are kind of slowly moving out of fashion in favor of more specific blocks of information. So there's like nav for navigation. Like a navigation div can have its own like proper label now, but for the most part, we're going to use divs just because they're. I don't want you to have to memorize every HTML tag either, so it's a trade-off. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, fears? Okay, cool. So so now with Bootstrap we have rows and columns, and so you need to have a container. Inside the container you need to have a row, and inside of the row you need to have at least one column. That's kind of the methodology of Bootstrap. It's you need to have at least 3 divs in order to make this work. Okay, so a div inside of a div inside of a div, and then you put your stuff. Okay, now we have more than that because I have a 2-column layout here. Okay, so in here I have 2 columns, and the way the columns work, and again I'll dig more into Bootstrap later. You don't have to freak out. I'm just trying to give you a general overview. Okay, so the way columns work is there are 12 columns on the screen. If you want to fill up half the screen, you say it's 6. Okay, and the SM just is a signifier to say where it goes from 6 to 1. So I'm saying on mobile, make it 1. On everything else, make it 6. Okay, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Sort of. Don't worry about it. That's basically 6 is half of 12, so it's half the screen. And on mobile, it's all in one column. That's really that's the gist of that. Okay. Now, finally, if we did all of that, nothing would show up on the screen. Okay. You wouldn't see boxes inside of boxes unless we give it borders or colors. Okay. And by default, none of this stuff has borders or colors. You have to do that. That's what CSS is about. So the first content we have on the page is right here. Initial left column with column text in HTML. Okay. So, and I'll go into more about what this comment means once we get into the JavaScript. Okay. So the p tag. Anybody know what a p tag is? Loud and proud. Paragraph. Thank you. So this is just plain text, basically. Anything that's plain text, you just wrap it in a paragraph tag, p tag. Okay. The ones that I use a lot tend to be for semantic HTML reasons. If you are concerned about search engine optimization, you want to use H1, H2, H3 tags. Those are headers. The biggest is H1, and then H2 all the way down to H6, and then paragraphs. Okay. So plain text is usually in either an H tag or a P tag. Okay. And then we have the second column. And so this is just saying initial right column text in HTML. And then just for fun, I also put an icon in here. So if you want to be able to throw some graphics in there really easily, that's what the Font Awesome library is for. So you just keep that. I should open that back up. So this Font Awesome library, all you have to do is include that one line and you just copy paste it. And then that allows you to use this. And this is a really non-standard format of HTML, but it's using CSS tricks in the Font Awesome library to create an icon tag, basically, okay? Because the I tag does not stand for icon, it stands for italics, okay? But you're not supposed to use italics for all sorts of reasons. So now Font Awesome allows you to use the I tag to create an icon, and you say what icon you want by giving it an ID. So this is the exact icon we want, or I'm sorry, by doing the class, that's what selects the icon out of the Font Awesome library. And I'll show you what that looks like. So on fontawesome.com, there's all these icons. You can search for whatever you want. The ones that are in black, I think, are the ones that are free. They have like a paid thing you can get. Like, you don't have to worry about that, but they have a lot of icons for all sorts of things. So like if I want to have like in honor of the new iPhone that's coming out as we speak, we could grab an Apple logo here, okay? Or a tablet or a mobile or something like that. So there's all these little icons, and built into HTML, there's no easy way to do that. This lets you do that, other than using emoji, but emoji in HTML is actually kind of difficult to do. So this is a little bit easier. It's a little more human readable, okay? So if we want to use, I should actually just follow all the way through here. If we want to use this Apple here, just click on it, and then they tell you up at the top, this is the HTML you use, okay? It's really small, but basically I could just click on it, that'll copy it, okay? So it's this I tag with FAB, FA Apple, okay? So you just have to use that, okay? And if I wanted to replace this with that, I can just put that in there. And that'll be that Apple one, okay? I'm going to hit Command Z for undo. You guys all know undo, Control Z. Learn hotkeys. Again, like if you get bored with me after a week and you don't learn anything else, learn that hotkeys are the best thing ever, okay? So on the Mac, it's usually with the Command key. On Windows, it's the Control key. So copy, paste, cut, print, save, open, undo. These all have shortcut keys. Learn those. You're going to lose your mind if you don't, because it'll speed you up like literally by 10 times. Okay? If you have to like go up to the file menu and notice all these little things here, these are all the shortcuts. Okay? So in Atom, there's all these shortcuts, and some of them are like Shift, Command, this, and you can really go deep. But the really basic ones like New File, Open, Save is Command S, Control S on Windows, right? So learn those. And by the way, they're the same in most programs. So like learning them in one program, usually they're the same. So you just build up like muscle memory. So anyway, Command Z. So now this is back the way it was, and we have our ID here again. Okay, so that is the HTML. Any questions about the HTML at all? We're never going to talk about HTML again. I'm just kidding. we probably will, but it's really not any harder than that. It's just more. There's just more tags and more stuff. But really, like if you half understood that, you're almost there. You're a web developer. Okay. And then finally at the bottom is our JavaScript file. Okay. We're going to spend most of our time talking about JavaScript. Maybe not today, but overall. Okay. So this is how the web page knows about your JavaScript file. So hello world.js. And it used to be that we would put our JavaScript at the top in the head, and that was the intention. But JavaScript files have become so big and so important in the web that they now go at the bottom so that they don't slow down the loading of your web page. Okay, so the best practice now is to put this at the bottom. That allows the web browser to load in everything else first, and then start working on your JavaScript afterwards. Okay, so that's an actual performance concern, and so just you might as well do the best practice right out of the gate, even though these are super small. Everything we're doing is super small, and it probably wouldn't even matter even a little bit to put it up at top. Okay, just put it at the bottom. You'll be better off. Okay, so that is HTML. Everybody pretty good? I might as well show you the validator real quick. So, I'm going to hit Command A if you're on Windows, Control A. That's select all. That's in most programs. And then I'm going to go Command or Control C. And then I'm going to go up to that validator. And if you ever forget what it is, just Google is your friend, HTML validator. It'll be the very first thing. Okay, you do not have to memorize that. And then I'm just going to go validate by direct input, and I'm going to go Command V, paste it in there. And then I'm going to hit check, and hopefully if I didn't screw up, it'll say everything's good. And I think it's good, right? Yeah, no errors. Okay. They used to give you a check mark. Sorry. So if I have an error in here, so let's introduce an error in here. I can make little changes right in here, right? So I have this ID hello world column 1, and I have, remember we said IDs can only be used once. If I change this to column 1 again and I hit check, it should yell at me. Okay? That's pretty awesome. The computer tells you when you screwed up, the instructions you're trying to tell the computer. I know it might not seem awesome when you're trying to fix things, but like this is actually really awesome, and this is a very useful error message. Okay, so it's, what does it say here? Duplicate ID, hello world column 1, and it tells me where the first occurrence was. Like this is a super helpful error message. So it says on line 36 is the first one, and then we have a repeat on line 43, and that's no good. Okay, so there's no line numbers in this, and they don't expect you to edit it there. But if I go back to my text editor, all good text editors are going to have line numbers over here, right? At least as an option. And this is where the IDs are, 36 and 43. So it directs you how to fix that real quick. Okay? Good? Good. Use that. All right, so now let's look at CSS real quick. This is what a CSS file is. Anybody want to take a stab at what a CSS file is? Yeah.
It's basically a style sheet that you.
It is totally a style sheet. Yep. What's your name again?
Dustin.
Okay, I'm going to ask you that a million times. I'm so sorry. Dustin?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I've heard that HTML5 is actually very reliant on CSS. Is that true?
totally. Yeah, I mean, we're making baby programs and we're using CSS.
Okay.
So, yes. Not only are we using CSS, but we're including Bootstrap, which is a whole CSS library. So it includes a bunch of CSS that we're not even looking at. There's a bunch of properties that are like built in. Because, yeah, like it's basically you got to make it look the way you want it to look. Because if you don't, it's going to look really stupid and boring. Yeah, awesome question. Good. So the SS in CSS is style sheets. The C is cascading. Okay, and that actually is important. Okay, we call it style sheets as kind of a shorthand, but the cascading part is important. There is an order of precedence in which things can get overridden. So if the default for Bootstrap is to have a white background, and Bootstrap is loaded in first, when I load in my Hello World CSS, I can override that. Okay, so I can change the color by just repeating the same item and change the color. Okay, so just real quick, the basic syntax for changing things in CSS. Okay, so if I want to change a P tag, that's just the letter P. Okay, we can just use the tag name. So a P. If I want to say all the paragraphs, I use a curly brace. So if you guys are used to Java, there's your friend, the curly brace. You're never going to escape it. Most good text editors will do some of the formatting automatically. So you notice that it's indented automatically. Like I didn't do that. The text editor did that. Now I can type in properties. Okay. You do not have to memorize all the properties, but if you want it to look a certain way, you got to look up the property to make it do that, okay? And there are properties to make it do anything. So the text size, the text weight, the text color, the font, all sorts of things, okay? So like here I have the P tag, and I'm changing the font size to 5M. Now the cascading nature of CSS, I can repeat the P tag again down here, and I could say font size 1M. And the 1M is going to take priority over the 5M because it came later. Okay, it cascades. The thing that came last overrides the thing that came first. Okay, and that doesn't really matter in one file unless it's a really long file and you get confused. You probably shouldn't have repetition because there's no point in that, right? But if you have multiple CSS files, obviously you want to make sure you have the right precedence going on. Okay, so overriding a tag, this will override all of the paragraphs. All the paragraphs will have a font size of 5M. There are different sizing types. You can use, I think it'll automatically fill in some of these. Nope, I guess not. So we can use pixels. That would be a really small font, okay? Pixels are just the dots on your screen, right? We can do VH, which is a proportional number of the height of your viewport. So like it's sort of a percent. So if I use 100 VH, that means it's going to be the height of the screen. Okay. If I want to have my font that big. I usually use M's, and those are relative units. So if I have the P tag be 5M and I have an H1 tag then be double that at 10M, I just know that it's twice as big. Okay. Easy peasy, all right? We don't have any H1s in there yet, so we're not going to worry about that. So the other thing, so the body tag is the same thing. Body, I kind of glossed over, but there's a body tag in the HTML. This is setting the properties on that. And yeah, actually I did use the height 100 VH on that. By default, your body tag doesn't stretch the whole screen. So that can be a little bit confusing. Even if you change the color, it'll change the color of the whole screen. The actual like actionable box is not the whole screen height. So to do some of the JavaScript, I actually had to make it the full height. So that's what that little comment means there. So I'm calling that a trick. I don't know if it's really a trick, but and then I'm setting the default font size. What this does, if I set the part of the cascading nature of CSS is things that are set in body get inherited by other elements that are within the body. Okay, so the default text size is set to 16 pixels. Okay, then anything that I set with M's, this is going to be 5 times 16. That's what M's are. Okay, so I set the size of 1M here, basically. 1M is 16 pixels, so this will be, I don't know, math is hard, 80 pixels for the font size, so pretty big, right, for a paragraph, but whatever. We're just trying stuff out. And then finally, another reason I love Atom is there's all these little like plugins, just like Chrome has plugins and other programs have plugins. You can get little add-ons to add functionality to the Atom text editor. This is a color, and in CSS we specify color using hexadecimal, which is like you weren't born knowing hexadecimal, especially hexadecimal color codes. But this makes it easy to see what that actually means, okay? So the way CSS works for colors is we could also do this. We can do RGB, and again, this sort of fills it in for me. I kind of went fast there. So I can do like I could specify the color using RGB. Have you guys used Photoshop at all? You familiar with like RGB? Anybody want to, you know what RGB is? What's RGB? Yeah,
Red, green, blue.
exactly. It's not more complicated than that. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue. Yeah,
Right, each number's the brightness of each color.
you got it. Yeah. Okay. So it seems like really baby stuff here, but it's super powerful, right? So in terms of we could specify this particular one as RGB. FF is the red component, so that's 255. I don't know what 99 equals, but we're going to guess it's like 180, okay? And that's going to be roughly the same color, okay? So each of these things, this gets broken down. FF is, things go from 0 all the way to F. So 0 to 9, and then A, B, C, D, E, F. So A is equal to 10, B is 11, whatever, up to F is 15. Okay, and what we have here is FF. So if you think about like our real numbers, like 255, regular decimal numbers, hexadecimal, we have the 16s place and then we have like the ones place and the 16s place, right? So if we have like 16 16s, that's what this F is, okay? So, or 15 16s, whatever. So you don't have to like know all of this stuff though. There are online tools for picking colors. Okay, that's the moral of the story. But you can also kind of eyeball things. Like if you just remembered that that these are split into red, green, and blue, and 0 0 is the lowest, FF is the highest, and everything in between is in between. You can kind of eyeball things, right? So that's what I usually do. Just to get things, if I'm just trying to eyeball things and make things quick, and I'll skip, I'll use like 99, like 33, 66, 99, doubled up things. So FF and 0 0 are at the bottom, and then just kind of doubled up all the way through. So for instance, this one is purple. So it's 9 for the red, 0 for the green, 99 for the blue. It's not 99. It's like 99 in hexadecimal. Okay, you don't have to know what all that means. There are a ton of color picker tools. Just go. There's one built into Google now. So if you just Google CSS color picker, like it will give you what you need here. Actually, don't they give us this? Oh yeah, right here, the hex right here. Okay, so there's all these other values. So there's the RGB values right here, right? And I think, can I type these? Yeah. So if I have FF9999, that's that pink color I had. So I was a little off. So it's 255, 153, 153, right? So these kind of convert to decimal, but you don't have to know that. Like this is the code you want, the hexadecimal code. You can just punch it into Google, copy paste. Any questions about that? Colors are easy, right? Think how powerful and cool that is. I think that's awesome. All right, so that's CSS. Okay, so that's tags with CSS. Now the other piece is classes and IDs. Okay, so the reason we specify classes and IDs in HTML is so we can access them in CSS. So in particular, this is the address book icon I had, and I set this to purple. So we specify IDs with this £. Okay, we specify classes with a dot. Okay, so anything that has the ID of address book icon will have a £sign in it. Okay, and technically, because this is an the I tag, we can go I and then £sign address book icon. That's the same. That's going to mean the same exact thing, since there can only be one element on the page. Not one element per type, one element period. Okay, and we'll see why that is in JavaScript. Okay, but classes, there can be multiples. Okay, there can be classes for each type of property and or each type of tag, and so in terms of Bootstrap, that makes it pretty powerful and easy to. It helps a lot. Okay, and JavaScript. I didn't mean to take the whole class. Sorry, guys. I won't do that again. this JavaScript is super easy, and this is going to be kind of the template that we use for all of our projects, okay? And most of it is necessary stuff. So you could start all your projects with copying and pasting exactly this one. I'm going to usually give you a starter kit that's going to, be similar to this, but have stuff pertinent to the next project. But you could start from this and build things a little quicker, okay? So if you're used to Java, there's the main method, and it's got a whole bunch of other gibberish. That is basically what this is, okay? This is not technically required because JavaScript is interpreted, and you can do some quick and dirty things in JavaScript without this. But we're going to use this, what I'm referring to as a self-executing global anonymous function. We're going to use this to contain our code so that it doesn't interfere with any other JavaScript that you might include on the same page. Okay, so we're kind of keeping our program separate from other programs by keeping it all in this function. Okay, so these comments at the top, some of these comments have to be kept. So JSLint requires this to be in here. Okay, for the stuff we're doing, and that's why I'm going to give you a starter kit for each one. If anything needs to be added to this to validate in JSLint, I'm going to put it in there for you. Okay. And then the other things are just comments that you can kind of take or leave. You can get rid of them. But again, at the top, I'm saying please don't forget to validate at jslint.com. So don't do that. So we have this global anonymous function. Anybody know what a function is, or does everybody know? Anybody not know what a function is? It's okay to not know. Who wants to give me like a definition of a function, like in programming? Yeah.
It takes whatever you input and does whatever you need it to do.
Perfect. Yeah. So kind of like if I have a plumber, this is not a super good analogy, right? But like I just want to have like a thing that does a thing, right? I can call that thing and have it do it 20 times. So that's all it is, okay? So in this case, this is sort of weird. JavaScript has these things called anonymous functions. Other languages have them too. We're using that in this case to keep things just kind of organized. But usually you have a function that you can call from another section so that you can repeat your code easier, okay? So it's meant to be able to repeat code so you don't have to type things out over and over again, okay? All right, I will try to finish up real quick. Actually, should we just stop there? You guys don't care. Yes, sir.
So I saw the function wasn't named, so does that have anything to do with the anonymous?
Yep, that's what anonymous. It's not named.
Okay.
Yep, and you don't have to worry about that. Like literally, like your programs should all look like this with a bunch of stuff inside of it. Okay, all of them. Okay, so you don't have to worry about why. So so real quick. All your programs need to have use strict, okay? Because we're good programmers and we're gonna do things right. So that's what use strict is. So you have to do that. Obviously, it's not required in JavaScript. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to put it there. But in our case, we are going to. We have our variables listed here. I'm gonna go into more depth next time on this, and then we have our anonymous function here that deals with the click, okay? So we have some variables that have some new content that have that pull in our content from the web browser, and then we have the anonymous click function that deals with the action of clicking and has it do some things, okay? And that's all we're doing with this, okay? So this is done. It does some stuff. All you literally have to do is make it do some just other stuff. This is like a baby task just to get your feet wet in JavaScript, okay? So, and I'll dig in a little more on Thursday on that. And I'll have some videos on Notepad++ and CyberDuck and whatnot. Any quick questions before we get done? Otherwise, I'll stop our recording. I'm getting tired of the sound of my own voice. How can I stop this? right here.